Welcome to Better Things, the podcast where Detroit's change makers and boldest voices come together for authentic conversation. We highlight the people who are building businesses, shaping culture, and driving progress one neighborhood and one voice at a time. I'm Diallo Smith, the president and CEO of Life Remodeled. And today we're going to dive deep into the heart of the city to hear directly from those who are forecasting and shaping the future of our city. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to Better Things, the podcast where Detroit's biggest voices, boldest voices, and brightest minds come together to share stories of impact, innovation, and inspiration, one neighborhood at a time. Today's guest is Dr. Nikolai Vitti. He is the superintendent of Detroit Public School District that serves over 50,000 students and employs over 6,000 people. And Dr. Vitti, we're glad to have you here to share your vision of the future of education in Detroit and Detroit neighborhoods. So I always like to start off with asking this question, right? This is a podcast for Detroiters and for Detroit neighborhoods. So what's your best memory of a Detroit neighborhood?
That's easy. So as a kid, my grandparents rented out a parking lot by the old Tiger Stadium, Michigan and Trumbull. And in the summer, I'd go with them. They park cars. Never really knew how this worked, but my grandfather had a deal with one of the ushers.
A deal.
He was definitely a hustler, and let him park in the lot, and in exchange for free. In exchange, this usher was in charge of giving the tickets to the players' families. So when the players' families didn't use the tickets, it was understanding I could get into the game. So we'd park cars, help my grandparents park cars, and then right before the game started, I'd go by the window, and he'd just give me a little, this, and then let me in the game. But my grandfather would watch the cars at night or after the game. So he'd watch the cars, I'd be in the game, I'd come out, always stay after when the players got out, try to get autographs.
Oh, wow.
But my family had he rented a house in Corktown, right across the street from Tiger Stadium. So my best memories are parking cars, with my grandparents, trying to get the autographs at the games, and then, staying night at our place, this house. I sleep in the bed with my grandfather, and often over the weekend, you'd have a night game on a Friday night, and then a day game and a Saturday. So, I'd wake up early with him. We'd go to a diner and have breakfast together and lunch, and help park cars, collect the money, and then go on the Tiger game. So, the people in the neighborhood, always good people. Just talking about life issues, hanging out, talking about politics and sports. Those are my best memories.
When you quick question about that. So is there one autograph that you got that's more memorable than others?
Well, my two favorite players were Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker growing up,
Yeah.
and I got both of their autographs. So those were probably the best ones. But just always good memories. And thinking back, I'd be there till 12 o'clock midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Never had issues. People always treated me well, and I think I go back to that's a neighborhood experience. I'd literally walk across the street and go to meet up with my grandpa at the house, and just always good people, good memories. So some of the best memories I have growing up.
It's interesting. So when I ask that question, I always hear those.
People took care of me.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Well, yeah. That's what life in any neighborhood should be about, right? Where you feel as though you're taken care of. There's people that you can trust, and also that community is built in schools.
Correct.
Right. The best friends that I have, and I'm sure you can say the same, are people that I went to grade school with, high school with, and share some of those memories, both good and bad. Good grades, but also sometimes getting into trouble, but their memories nonetheless.
Yeah.
A lot of people may not realize, I'm glad you shared that story. So you've been superintendent now, you said going on 9 years.
Yeah, going into the school year number 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's the second longest of any superintendent in DPS or DPS CD history.
Yeah, longest, 14 years, Arthur Jefferson. Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people realize that you're from the Detroit area and spent time here. And I can remember talking with you a little while ago, and you talked about coming back to Detroit to take this role here after being in Florida for a little while. Really was a dream come true for you. What was that like, getting that phone call?
I'm an athlete, or once was an athlete. I'm not an athlete anymore. So it was, I used to talk about it like being drafted by your home team. You see guys go to high school, college, and grow up in here, and they play for the Lions or the Tigers or the Red Wings, and that's how it felt to me. I didn't grow up in Detroit proper, but I grew up in Dearborn Heights, Dearborn Inkster area, and Detroit is part of my DNA. Whether it's me or my family, we've had our successes and struggles, and the city means a lot to me. It meant a lot to my family, and so being in Jacksonville, doing the work, creating a national reputation of reform. When the search firm called me, it was an honor to be called, and they said, look, we need someone with a track record, but someone who has the right sentiments, can empathize, sympathize with the city, because you need to push for reform, but you got to be sensitive to the history and challenges. And I think the board understood that when they got to know me. And my mother kept on saying, hey, you should do it, you should do it. And I always said, I'll do it if the board was serious about reform. And 9 years in, the board was serious about reform. We've had a lot of iterations of the school board since I started, but the board continues to be focused on reform, and really was true to empower me as the day-to-day operational leader. And so the success we've had, and we got way more to go, is a testament to them empowering me. But I think it's based on my track record, ability to build a great team. But I go back to being sensitive to what the city has gone through and what it's still going through, and trying to balance support and accountability. And I think that goes back to having experiences that are similar to a lot of Detroiters when you're implementing that reform.
You talked about when the school board called you for the search firm, that it was during a challenging time. So if I remember correctly, you are the first superintendent installed after emergency management, and that was in 2017. And I can remember there was some upticks and some progress, and then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And then that bled over. When I say 2020, we're talking about COVID. So 2020, 2021, maybe even some of 2022. It was just education just broadly was a challenge. And then we came out of that, and so now it's 23, 24, and now we're at a point where we're another challenge, because it seems like there's an affront on public education broadly. When you think about the challenges that you've had to face in these last 9 years with what I just mentioned, what have you learned about yourself in leadership? And if you're talking to young leaders about how to navigate a team through change, what would be the one core principle that you would communicate?
Wow. So one, you always have to know what you're trying to achieve.
Sure.
What are your goals? So I would say into any young leader, you have to be intentional about what you are trying to move and change. And so for us, I think we've been very focused on 5 to 7 indicators: enrollment, student attendance, student achievement defined by MSTEP, SAT, being college ready on the SAT, being at an above grade level, showing growth, climate and culture measures on how our students feel. They feel loved, challenged, and prepared. Our staff, if they're supported. What I just named are about 5 or 10 indicators that I talk about as outcomes. And I always say, if we can move those outcomes district-wide and at every one of our 100 schools, we're going to create a difference for kids. And so sometimes people say, Dr. Vitti, you're always talking about numbers. And I was like, I talk about numbers because I want to stay focused. But behind the numbers are kids.
Absolutely.
And so I think in the K-12 space, often at the leadership level, there's a lot of talk about loving the kids and caring for the kids, and that's real. But you also have to lead a system to create change in systems and processes to benefit the kids. And you got to be able to measure that. And so through all these pandemic budget cuts or whatever it might be, are we staying focused on the metrics? And kids aren't numbers. But when you are increasing the number of kids that are college ready, you're increasing attendance rates, that's having an impact on children, and then the system is better supporting them. So I would say stay focused on the outcomes, and then problem solve on the inputs the strategies that lead to better outcomes, and what is a strategic plan to do that. And I think that's why we've been successful in improvement, whether it's overcoming emergency management or the pandemic, distractions that are happening at the federal level right now.
Yeah.
It's always about what are we trying to improve, how are we measuring it, how are we constantly refining and getting better to do that.
Let's talk a little bit about that one piece about the narrative that's being cast recently. I mean, it's not a new narrative. I just think it's just been louder in recent years, recent months, about the idea that public education as an institution is a failing institution. When you hear that, what do you think, and what is your response to that sentiment?
Yeah, when I hear that, I get a visceral reaction. It's almost anger.
That's that football player.
There's an ignorance and a politicalization often with that kind of statement, because it neglects the thousands of individual Detroiters, if in this context, that have had a fighting chance in this life, in this world, if it weren't for public education. It completely ignores that.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking about people being good citizens, to people having successful lives, to people being mayors, city council members, judges, lawyers. Like, we forget how many people this system did right for.
Yeah.
With that said, there are children and now adults that were failed by the system. But it doesn't mean abandoning the system itself. It means going back to making the system better, being committed to the system and improving, refining it so it can at scale improve more people's lives. But when you abandon the traditional public school system, you're abandoning a public institution that has served families and communities for decades, that has lifted people out of poverty, give people a fighting chance in this global hyper intense economy. Without that, what do really kids have as a lever for success and empowerment? It doesn't exist. Not at scale.
Yeah.
We can talk about charter schools, and charter schools individually, there are some great charter schools in the city.
Sure.
But I'm talking at scale.
Yeah.
Regardless of socioeconomic background, English language status, we serve all kids. And that there's a beauty and a beast that goes along with that. But if that system is not properly funded and supported politically, we're actually failing kids, usually our most vulnerable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that success. Now I love, you're a football guy, and Detroit is a football town. But you said something at the latest State of the Schools address. You said that the Detroit Lions didn't reach the Super Bowl, and DPSCD hasn't won the Super Bowl yet. So when you think about what the Super Bowl win is for DPSCD and how that impacts Detroit students, their families, and ultimately Detroit neighborhoods, what does that Super Bowl win look like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can answer that thinking more long term.
Okay.
In my mind, the Super Bowl is won, and I don't know if I will be the superintendent that gets us there. I'm continuing to scaffold to that point. But in my mind, we win the Super Bowl when we get to a point where Detroiters are sending their children to their neighborhood school. And that's going to take a long time, but we got to build to that point where when you buy a home, when you rent out a home or an apartment complex, you are looking forward to sending your child to that school. Yeah. When we think of the heyday of the city, the heyday of Detroit Public Schools, it was, we're going to go to Mumford.
Sure.
We're going to go to Finney.
Yeah.
That's where you were going to send your kids. And then there was a certain echelon, right, of folks that had the wealth and the means to go to Country Day or UAD or whatever it might be. But the vast majority, would just go to their neighborhood school.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm never going to abandon our exam schools or our application schools, because I think you need a different path for high-performing kids and certain families that want to be more selective, and I'm comfortable with that. Yeah. But really my work now in particular is trying to rebuild neighborhood schools and rebuild feeder patterns, because I think that is exactly how you rebuild communities and neighborhoods and eventually the city long term.
You talked about, well, we had an honest conversation prior to this episode just talking about the shifts that has happened in Detroit in the past 20, 30, 40 years, the socioeconomic shifts that's taken place. There was an article that came out today in the Detroit News that said that there was an uptick, I think a 4% uptick in poverty rates in the city in 2024 compared to 2023. And there was another study that correlated poverty to chronic absenteeism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you think about that correlation, what are some of the things that DPSCD is using? Because that's a tough reality,
Yeah.
And it's not one that can be ignored when a large number of the population set that you and your staff and your teachers serve are people within a certain social income background. What are some of the things that you think are necessary to be able to address poverty in schools?
Yeah. First of all, it's important for the school system and our employees to have the right mindset on this issue,
Okay.
which is talking about poverty shouldn't be a taboo subject. It is real.
Yeah.
And it has a direct impact on children's mindset when they come to school every day. Did they eat? Were they able to sleep throughout the night and not be disturbed? Was there an adult there throughout the day caring for them and talking? Are they being read to? Are they experiencing things outside of the home? How many times have they moved from home to home? I mean, we can keep on going. Those are all, a reliable transportation. All those things, whether we like it or not, impacts children's learning. So let's be real that there's a connection between poverty and education outcomes. With that said, this is the importance of public education, which is it can be a difference maker if it's properly funded, equally and eventually equitably, which means you're giving more to those children that need more. And we're still not there in Michigan. We're still not there in the country. But the mindset has to be, we're going to be real about poverty, but we're going to still have high expectations for our kids. And we're going to work with them. If they're 2 grade levels below, we got to get them 1 grade level below to being at grade level. If they're starting at grade level, then we got to get them advanced. So the mindset is not one of excuses. It's one of looking at the reality and trying to overcome that with how we use the resources we have and the partners that we bring in to support that. And so what DPSCD is doing more than anything, I think, right now to address this issue is our health hubs. So through private funders, mainly the Ballmer Group, we're funding these health hubs, which is really bringing back something that existed in the 60s in community schools, which is we have 12 feeder patterns throughout the city.
Yeah.
And each of those feeder patterns will have a health hub, which offers free medical support to kids and families. Any DPSCD family has access to it. Free vision screening and eyeglasses, free dental review and care, free mental health support, and a family resource center, which you have access to toiletries, things that most people don't even think about.
Right.
Deodorant,
Yeah.
toilet paper, access to eviction support, immigration support. And so, we talk about the whole child when we talk about arts and music and athletics, but it's also about the whole family.
Yeah.
And these are ways, I think, we're eliminating some of the real obstacles that families have to, getting their kids to school every day. And to your point earlier, the connection between poverty and attendance.
Yeah.
And so if you ask me what are one of the greatest challenges we have in DPSCD, it's attendance. And we've chipped away at it, but about 60% of our kids are still missing 18 or more days of school.
Yeah.
And we know that if students miss 18 or fewer days in our district, they're 3 to 5 times more likely to be at and above grade level in reading and math, or to be college ready in high school. So we're starting to do the right thing in the classroom across the district. We just got to get kids come to school more often, and the health hubs are a piece of that. But all the other work we're doing, bringing back art, music,
Sure.
athletics,
Sure.
smaller class sizes, more one-on-one support. That's some of the broader academic work. But I think those health hubs are one of the ways to attack the disintegration of social networks that once existed in the community.
And to bring that back in the school setting, it's interesting. You talked about the whole family being impacted. I was one of the programs that Life Remodeled is engineering, is a technology and esports program at DB High School. And I was there yesterday talking with the students. They're incredible. They're smart. They're
Absolutely.
ready.
Yeah.
They're looking forward to the future. one of the mothers came by and was just peeking inside, checking out her daughter. And she said, "Hey, are you in charge here?" I said, "Well, I know a few people."
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, that's my daughter right there, and I really want for her to be a part of this program. And she can draw, and she can do all these things." So I said, "Oh, really? I didn't know." So then she said, "Oh, she didn't show you her book?" I said, "No." So she goes inside, and she goes into her daughter's book bag, much to her chagrin. Her daughter's like, "What? No, don't you?" Takes out her art book, and she shows me all the drawings that her daughter has made. Brilliant, brilliant child. But it struck me that that mother was doing what parents are supposed to do, figuring out a way to navigate their child in a way that can put them in the best position to succeed. When you're thinking about your families, and I like the way you said that, it's not just the student, it's the parents, it's the sisters, it's the brothers, it's the siblings, it's the whole family, the grandparents. What would you say to a parent? This is the optimal way that if navigated well, your son or daughter can go through DPSCD, graduate, and your child do well. What are the levers in the household that need to be pulled in order to complement what's going on during the daytime in the school system?
Well, again, whether you live in a large house, a small house, an apartment complex, it's the culture that you create in the house to promote learning, regardless of your own success or failure in school. My mom dropped out of high school and got a GED. And she struggled throughout my whole life trying to navigate the system, advocating, not feeling comfortable going to school. This is one of the reasons why I wrote my dissertation on the Parent Academy, because it was all about trying to empower parents to advocate, to have the confidence to advocate for their child's school. But despite all that, one thing that my mother always did was talk to us. She'd always ask, we'd be watching TV, the news at night, and she's like, "Do you agree with the mayor?" and make us talk and make us defend our ideas.
Yeah.
And or the newspaper would be there, and she's like, as you eat your cereal, read the newspaper.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
and
sure.
so,
I'm sure that was on your top 10 list.
and so
Reading
my
the newspaper in the
yeah,
morning.
well, the sports section. But the point is our parents, our families have to create an environment where it supports learning. So, is there a time in the day where it's quiet? You turn off the TV, you take the phones. We're going to do homework. Read a book. Parent read a book, grandparent read a book, child reads a book. Let's talk about it. Journaling, and developing vocabulary around talking about issues in the world around, and then getting into how did school go today? What did you learn? Who are you hanging out with? If you have a phone, who are you texting? Who are you snapping? And all the apps out there that students have, but monitoring what your children are doing. Where are they going after school? Getting them involved in sports or arts or something productive outside of school so they build their self-esteem. Setting goals. Every year, what are we going to accomplish this year? If we had a 2.5, are we going for the 3.0?
Yeah.
And then career-wise, what are we interested in? Is it nursing? Is it, we want to be a lawyer? We want to be a teacher? Want to be a mechanic? I mean, what's your interest in, and how do I navigate that through the system in finding the right neighborhood school, the right application school, the right exam school, and then how do I connect to other adults that can help my son or daughter, navigate that process. And this is where the system comes in, where we're doing a better job of basically giving a child an education. I think our next step is how do we make high school a launching pad for the world of work and college, or both, by being intentional around doing enrollment, advanced placement, but even internships, bringing back sort of the co-op process that existed in our high schools, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. Got to bring that back so that there is intentionality in the system to empower the student to recognize their talent, because all of our kids are talented, but is the system allowing that to flourish? So the young girl that you talked about, she's got to be in a drawing class.
Oh,
she's got to be connected to architecture, something.
Yeah, graphic design.
So that she And then it's just natural. Then you come to school more often. You're excited about going to school, and that just leads to other positive behavior.
Yeah. By the way, you said co-op 40 years ago. I said to myself, no, I'm not that. I did a co-op, but it wasn't 40 years ago. Come on, man, help me out
I
a little
changed
bit.
it. I said 20.
So I'm going to. This is not a trick question. This is just a random question. First word that comes to your mind when you hear these schools.
Okay.
All right. And this is in random order. Southeastern.
What do I think of?
What's your first word? The
Future.
future.
Can I explain why?
Yeah.
Because we're building a new wing at that school, advanced manufacturing. That goes exactly to the launch idea. So kids will be doing enrollment classes, but they have access to welding, advanced manufacturing, and internships, which they're doing now. But all that's going to be enhanced. And in the future, because we're putting what would be considered a career tech program at a neighborhood high school, Southeastern. So we're trying to rebuild that neighborhood high school so that you don't feel like you have to go to Renaissance or CAS. You go to your neighborhood school and you have access to this a more elite, different program.
I'll be remiss not to go to my alma mater, Cass Technical High School.
Excellence. You just that school is just a hotbed of talent. Whether it's the performing arts, academics, athletically, it's some of our most talented, students and families. Legacy. When you want to show off, you take everyone to CAS. What I want is to build that kind of elite culture in our neighborhood high schools.
Well, and also you can meet your future wife there. That's where my wife and I met. Last one. This is kind of a dual question because it's both literal because we're in this building, but also physical because it's right across the street. Yeah. Durfee.
Proud. Yeah. I mean,
tell me why.
I remember last year I did a walkthrough with the Durfee Central K-12, and I vividly remember being in this building.
Yeah.
And it was toward the end of it's when I started, May 2017. I remember walking the hallways, going to classrooms, and I was so disappointed and angry, to be honest with you, because the level of expectation was so low. You had kids wandering the hallways, instruction not going on. And it was one of the first examples I got of low expectations, lack of systems, lack of structure. We'll be honest, talked to the principal at that time, was no longer with us, just focused on so many kids being special needs and no vision, no expectations. And I went to Durfee and Central last year, I remember, and just teaching and learning every classroom. Yeah. I walk in, teachers don't even care I'm there. And that's when they're focused on teaching and learning. Yeah. So it's not, oh, Dr. V, let me shake your hand. It's, I'm working. You can walk around.
I'm doing my job.
Exactly. And the kids were, very intense and focused on what they were doing. No one was in the hallway. Yeah. Went to the high school and they just saw the continuity of that focus. The Central kids were great, talking about, I'm going to go to college. These are the courses I'm taking. So just proud of the ability of our principal there to bring it all together too, because she started at Durfee and then I made her the K-12, and you really see the vision of the continuity K-12, which I didn't have the vision to do the K-12. That was done before I started, and I was always skeptical whether we could do it right, but knew what we could do. We get the right leader and the right expectation, and so just proud.
Yeah,
proud.
Yeah, we are too. We're in the former Durfee school building, which is not a Durfee Innovation Society, but 60% of those students come to some after-school program here, and so we're proud to be a part of that ecosystem. Last question I'll ask for you, and this is something that I ask everybody at the end of our segment. So the name of this show is called Better Things, and it's taken from the inscription on the City of Detroit flag that we hope for better things. Mm-hmm. When you think about what you're hoping, the better thing that you're hoping for the City of Detroit, what is that?
I always talk about, we talked a little bit about talent, in this conversation, and Detroit, we don't have a talent problem. We have an opportunity problem. My hope is that, everyone connected to the city, everyone that was once connected to the city, invests back in its youth, and finds ways to continue to build systems and processes and experiences so that youth can understand, appreciate their talent. Because I believe our kids are not only more talented than other kids, but because of how the challenges that they experienced growing up, I think they're better than other kids. There's a natural intelligence,
Yeah.
there's a natural perseverance.
Yeah.
And when I think about my life and how I got here, certainly some level of intelligence and all that, but it was perseverance. It was a chip on my shoulder when people said I couldn't do this or do that led me here. Yeah. And I see the same thing in our kids. But you got to give them a path.
Yeah.
And you got to support, love them, and challenge them to do that. So for me, my hope is that people see that talent and invest in it and stick with it. And that's the other thing. It's not, I use flash in the pan. I've been saying that a lot, but it's like you got to do it in a consistent, persistent, continual way. It's not, we're going to fund something for a year and move away. It's what you guys are doing. Yeah. It's consistent, it's over time. Yeah. And you got to be patient, and you got to deal with the challenges and the disappointments. Yeah. This isn't easy. It's not easy. And so can we get people dedicated for this for generations? Yeah. Or just one generation. Yeah. It's not going to be solved with $1 here, a little photo op here. You got to stay in it. And that's why I've stayed as superintendent, is that this was never about a resume builder. I could go get a job somewhere. Yeah. It was about being committed to the work and showing sustainability, and then eventually passing this on to hopefully another effective leader to just build off of what I've done. And that's how we have to start thinking in the city. It's not about quick fixes, it's about building infrastructure and rebuilding what was once great in the city.
Well, Dr. Vitti, I'm first of all, thank you for coming on the show. Yeah. Thank you for being our superintendent and for doing it as long as you have. And who knows how long it's going to be, but what I do know is that you're going to give your 100% all, and we appreciate that. We have a saying here at Life Remodeled that you just echoed, and that is that Detroiters have all the talent that they need, but many don't have access to the opportunities they deserve to thrive.
Absolutely.
And so when we can open those doors of opportunity, then look out.
Exactly.
The comeback. What did LL say? Don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years.
That's one of my favorite
Thank
songs.
you, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you.
You too.
Join us for future episodes of Better Things as we continue to have conversations with key voices across the city of Detroit. And if you want to learn more about Life Remodeled's mission, please go to liferemodeled.org. We'll see you next time.